Irish Republicans were under more pressure than the British government to agree to the truce in July 1921. How far would you agree with this verdict on how the Anglo-Irish War of 1919-21 came to an end? Political pressure on Irish Republicans. Political pressure pushed Sinn Féin and the IRA towards a ceasefire as the continuation of the fight became increasingly difficult. Dáil government difficulties. Arthur Mitchell suggests that Dáil counterstate had lost vitality by 1921 for three reasons. Firstly, the Dáil courts were in decline. Secondly, the Department of Local Government was in huge financial deficit which reduced its effectiveness. Third, Dáil sittings, infrequent and only 20 deputies due to prison or being on the run, couldn't function effectively. Acceptable truce offer. In December 1920, the British government offer of truce contained many preconditions, such as the IRA having to hand in guns. In July 1921, there were hardly any preconditions. This made a truce politically acceptable to the Republicans. A rejection could alienate public support. War weariness. The population was tired of carrying the fight, especially in crucial areas of the county, like Cork and Tipperary, that had borne the brunt of the fighting, made guerrilla war increasingly difficult. Rees comments, commandering of food by the IRA was increasingly resented. Public opinion hostile. To the IRA campaign and its guerrilla war tactics in Ireland, this mainly come from the Roman Catholic Church. Example, one bishop excommunicated Catholics that had been proven to have engaged in murder. Also, Roger Sweetman, a Sinn Féin deputy, openly denounced IRA tactics after December 1920, such as counter-reprisals, burnt down unionist houses per reprisal. Rees comments, by 1921 some IRA commanders reported increased hostility to the IRA, destroying communications like bridges and etc. Disrupted locals too. In Britain, the government called the IRA the murder gang, and while many British newspapers, such as the Manchester Guardian, were becoming more sympathetic to Sinn Féin, guerrilla tactics were seen as uncivilized, hence De Valera's call for larger tactics. De Valera's return from USA. After a failed attempt to get American recognition of Irish independence allowed a political solution to be attempted, especially as De Valera himself disapproved of the running of the war. Military pressure on Irish Republicans. Military pressure on the IRA forced many volunteers to agree that a truce was necessary. Rees comments, IRA running out of steam by summer 1921. Nature of guerrilla war. The IRA could not hope to win a war in the traditional sense. The best that they could hope for was to force Lloyd George to negotiate. Townsend comments, achieve psychological victory out of a military stalemate. Martial law, initially introduced for 4 southern counties in December 1920, included the death penalty for carrying illegal weapons and the destructions of houses by explosives of those that helped the IRA. Better military intelligence led to significant arms files, a comments by Rees. Rees further comments, foot patrols put pressure on IRA flying column. Men did not sleep at home for months at a time and fewer civilians were willing to help. Rees comments, some commanders noted a drop in morale. Outnumbered. In January 1921 there were 1,500 interned. By July this was 4,500, meant by summer 1921 it was 3,000 IRA versus 40,000 Crown forces. Better British tactics. Rees comments, they had proper intelligence, aircraft to attack flying columns, etc., and they put IRA under severe pressure. Customs House raid was disastrous for the Dublin Brigade of the IRA. It took place after De Valera's return from the USA, and the suggestion that more large-scale attacks would be better for propaganda, although he did not directly order the attack. 70 experienced volunteers were captured and 6 killed. A small force like the IRA can never replace them. Collins' assessment of the IRA. Collins remarked to the British during the treaty negotiations that, "You had us in another 3 weeks." From his later actions of supporting the treaty, rather than a return to war, that he knew the IRA was in no condition to fight, we can assume that he was telling the truth. Political pressure on the British government. The British government came under intense public and international pressure to get an honourable solution in Ireland, especially as the violence escalated after December 1920. This eventually destroyed the political will to carry on the fight just as the IRA was about to be beaten. Rees comments, crucial factor was shift in public opinion against coercion. Public outrage at reprisals. The policy of meeting terror with terror that had a tacit support of the government quickly turned most public opinion against the security policy in Ireland. Bloody Sunday and the burning of Cork in the last months of 1920 were the most infamous reprisals. Some of the most important protests were: the Labour Party in January 1921 said, "Things are being done in Ireland in the name of Britain, which must make her name stink in the nostrils of the whole world." Leaders of the Protestant churches in England in April 1921 wrote that to overcome wrong with an equally indefensible wrong was unlawful. Sinn Féin Irish Bulletin had a healthy circulation in Great Britain. Ferreter says it put pressure on the government to justify Irish policy. Other examples include nearly all the British press, including The Times, The King, Asquith Liberals, and internationally in USA and the Empire. Bonar Law resigned from Cabinet. Through ill health in March 1921 undoubtedly gave Lloyd George more room for manoeuvre by removing a powerful Conservative obstacle to a truce. Cabinet pressure. Top political allies were suggesting that Lloyd George pursue a truce by 1921. Example: Birkenhead and Churchill, who said there were two choices in Ireland: war with the utmost violence or peace with the utmost patience. King's speech. At the opening of the NI Parliament in June 1921, called on all Irishmen to forgive and forget. This allowed Lord George to save face in asking for a truce. It was at the King's wish. Prospect of Crown Colony Government. There was deadline of July 21st after the Government of Ireland Act elections. This would sweep away the normal civil government in the 26 counties and would be embarrassing abroad. Military pressure on British government. Victory against the IRA looked like it would necessitate a massive widening of martial law and a commitment of extra troops. By the summer of 1921 this had become, as Hopkins points out, unpalatable to the British government. Indiscipline. Macready frustrated at events like Maroon Police Order and the burning of Cork. Townshend on martial law of December 1920 was as much as to get control of the police as to intimidate rebels. Go all out or get out were the options facing the army, as Henry Wilson, a government military advisor, put it. Lloyd George had declared it's a policeman's job and this needed to change. In Townshend's words, repression was too weak to root out opposition but provocative enough to nurture it. Martial law extension. This was advised as the IRA could skip across counties that were outside martial law, therefore the entire southern 26 counties would be included. Macready, head of the army in Ireland, said he would need 200,000 men for the job, and yet was still uncertain if Cruisin on its own would work. Deadline of October 1921 could not endure another winter, Macready stated. The Great British government could not face the bad press with more reprisals, and commitment to this would necessitate more troops. Conclusion. For Irish Republicans there was huge political pressure to accept the truce, as the Irish population grew wary of the war, but ultimately it was the inability of the IRA, in Cullen's assessment, to carry on the fight that brought them to the table. In this contrast, the British, who had the military means to finish the war, but no longer the political will to suffer its consequences, that made them desire a truce. As Michael Hobbs suggests, a truce has become imperative for both sides.